when leaders around the world want to learn about how people live, they usually turn to traditional economic indicators such as GDP per capita, health, literacy, and so forth. Starting from 2006, Gallup annually polling in 120, 150 countries around the world, covering 98% of adult population. And we do measure some of the objective indicators, for example, employment, incidence of crime, and income. But at the same time, we pay special attention to subjective measures. We really want to understand what makes people life happy. And today I will show you our main indicators of happiness. First one is life evaluation. It's how people evaluate their life or how they see their life. And second one is experiential part. It's positive and negative experience. In other words, how people live their life. And all these three measures, life evaluation, positive experiences, negative experience, they give like additional angle to traditional economic indicators. And what's most important is that this data comes from best expert on people's life is the people themselves. So our very first question in all our surveys is the following. Imagine a ladder with steps from 0 to 10, where 0 is your worst possible scenario in your life. 10 is your best possible scenario. At which step do you stand at present time? And then we ask identical question, but about where will you stand in 5 years? Based on these two questions, we classify people in 3 groups. Suffering, it's obviously the worst, struggling, and thriving. The beauty of these questions is that people, when they answer these questions, they think about what's important to them. And I encourage you to think about this too. And we will do a little survey during the break about it too. So people think about what's important for them. So for some people it might be how much money they earn, but for others it can be if they're close to their children, how is their health, and probably if you're in love, that's what you're thinking about, and your life evaluation goes up. So, if you look at life evaluation, in which country do you think women are the happiest? Anybody? Okay, Denmark. Thriving. So our thriving groups, so obviously more people in thriving groups, better it is. So what's special? What about Denmark? What can we say about Denmark? Denmark is overall high development group, long life expectancy, high income. And what we see around the world that when you think about life evaluation, income, household income is the main driver or contributor of life evaluation, of how people see their life. So not surprisingly, if you look at the thriving list, richest countries at the top of the list, and obviously poorest at the lowest. And you can see that only one major emerging market here on the list is Brazil. Now, and country with 0% of men and women thriving is Afghanistan. At the same time, look at the second column, it's highest suffering. 59% of women in Afghanistan are in suffering group. What's interesting about the suffering group is that it's not only countries with low development level. What's common about this group, it's countries with some which experience some kind of instability. It can be political, military, or economic. You can see that Greece and Bulgaria are right on this list together with Haiti, Afghanistan. Overall, around the world, men and women evaluate their life similarly. One exception, which might surprise you, is Middle East and North Africa. That's the only region where actually women evaluate their life slightly higher than men. Life evaluation gives us more in-depth information. Just one example. Egypt. So what we saw from the beginning of our data collections that GDP per capita in Egypt was growing nicely from year to year. At the same time, what we saw suddenly between 2007 and 2008, the percent of people who are in thriving group dropped dramatically from 25 to 13%. So 3 years before Arab Revolution, we could see that people are becoming more and more unhappy. And we see similar pattern in many countries around the world. Most recent is Ukraine. We saw that something is going on long before revolution. Now, let's think about positive and negative experience. So that's another way of thinking about are you happy or not. So we define positive experience as asking questions about how you felt yesterday. Positive experiences are you laugh or smile a lot, you felt enjoyment, well rested, respected, and learned or did something interesting. So here you see list is richest countries are not at the top of the list. As a matter of fact, Guatemala is number 3, very good example. Guatemala is a poor country, but from year to year it comes right to our top list. What it made us think that maybe drivers or contributors of happiness for how people live their life are different from how people see their life. And we did a study in the United States, and what the study proved that beyond 75,000 household income, money don't give you big effect, don't produce big effect on your positive experience. So, and it kind of is the same idea around the world. So what it means that after a certain point, money don't improve the way you live their life, it just improves the way you see your life. So obviously, I think what you see that basically most of the countries on this list are Latin American countries. So I guess we have to learn all from them. And in previous panel, someone said that maybe you shouldn't spend money on parties, but maybe you do have to spend money. Here what we see, again, no difference between men and women on positive experience. The worst in the world on positive experiences are women and men in Middle East, North Africa. So it's different from life evaluation. Now, negative experiences. Here what we ask people is about, again, yesterday, sadness, anger, worry, physical pain, stress. So, MENA, Middle East, North Africa, again, they are highest on negative in the world. And you can see that 3 countries on this list are from Middle East, North Africa. But also, you can see that there is a mixture of countries. Again, what affected, it can be economic instability or military, political instability. Just think for a second, Portugal and Syria are right next to each other on this measure, right? So, this is where men and women differ around the world. Women experience more negative emotions than men. A biggest gap is in my land, former Soviet Union countries. Women are 10-15% higher, have negative experiences. And what are the drivers, contributors of negative experience? It can be your health. Unemployment is a big one. Corruption, safety. Safety, by the way, is where another area where women are really behind men. Everywhere, in every country, women feel less safe than men. So they are more vulnerable. That's obviously one more reason why formal financial services are so important for women. So Leora, can your bank make you happy? Next slide, please.
So we like to say that financial inclusion isn't the end, but a means to an end. We should reduce poverty, reduce inequality, increase access to education, to electricity. And I was also wondering, are there any real welfare benefits? Is there actually an impact on both your happiness in a literal sense, but also your enthusiasm and your expectations for the future? And so this figure is showing the relationship between, on a country level, the percentage of adults who own an account and the well-being measure. Now, this is after controlling, we say residuals, it's after controlling for economic development as measured by GDP per capita. And we show a positive relationship. And even when we look at the data at the individual level, running regressions, controlling for country fixed effects for overall country trends, we still find, after controlling for age, gender, education, income, employment status, we still find this very significant relationship between having an account and well-being. It's almost as important as being married. And so, raises the question, what kind of services some of you are offering? But what is the channel through which we find this relationship? So it could be, certainly personality, the type of person who saves, and the effect is biggest for saving, notably both formally and informally, has the same boost on the well-being. So it might be people who are savers or also just more optimistic about the future, and that's the relationship. Or it might be the ability to save. Having money left over at the end of the month makes you happy and proud of your earning ability. Or it might be that having a safe place to save, saving money gives you insurance against unforeseen risks, that you have this money in the case of a health emergency, unemployment, the death of a family member. It might also be that you see yourself as trying to reach a savings goal, investment in educational or business opportunities makes you happier. I've had the pleasure of going with Gallup to pilot financial inclusion questions in India. We were in Calcutta, and this young woman was telling me she just opened her John account. And I asked her why, and she was saying that every week she tried to save a few pennies from the allowance that her husband gave her to put in the bank because she wanted to hire a tutor for her daughter. And so knowing that you're reaching your goals can increase your happiness. But I think what's most important for women is the terms we kept hearing this morning, that having an account increases your security, your privacy, and your control over your money, which is perhaps more disproportionately important for women. There's growing rigorous academic research throughout, primarily in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, showing, for example, that giving a woman her own safe place to save, giving a woman an account, increases her empowerment over household budget decisions. Women who are employed, who are receiving their paychecks or government transfer payments to an account, report that they're able to discuss with their husband at more opportune times how the money should be spent. They have greater control over household budget decisions, to the degree that there's very nice research out of Kenya showing that women who have an account for savings, there's an increase in family spending on nutritious food. And that's the real effect that should increase welfare. So, for example, I've been working in Bangladesh, helping transition to move mostly female textile factory workers from cash wage payments to payments directly into an account at a bank or the mobile money service provider. And a few months into this, we're watching them now for 2 years. And we want to see what's the impact on their ability to save, to invest, their role, their empowerment over household budget decisions. And we were doing just informal focus groups with women who have received accounts. And this woman said to me, on payday, my mother-in-law waited outside the gate for me to take my salary. Now she can't. And that's really the point. And so it's giving these women control and privacy over their money. However, and the big caveat, is at the starting gate, we have the challenge that women are less likely globally to have an account than men. So this is based on the Global Findex data, which I collect with the World Bank, which is a massive database in collaboration with Gallup and with financial support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We interview over 150,000 adults around the world. Methodologies, and we add questions to the Gallup World Poll Survey. And so this is information for 143 countries. And yeah, I must admit, what I've personally been most proud of from this data is that since the data was first published in 2011, this is the second round of data in 2014, I've been on my soapbox fighting for the importance of collecting data on the individual level. Prior to the Global Findex, there have been many surveys, but most are surveyed at household head. So that's the question is, what policymakers are interested in, what percentage of households in a country have an account? Which is an important question. But more important is who within the house, or as important, who within the household has an account. The beauty of the Global Findex data, the Gallup poll, is that the randomization is done at the individual level, which means you can splice and dice the data. We can statistically, significantly aggregate data for men versus women and identify these gaps. So as this figure shows, in high-income countries, there's no significant gap on average. However, in developing countries, on average, men are 9 percentage points more likely than women to have an account, and this gap hasn't budged since 2011. And that masks many regional and country differences. For example, in India, men are over 20 percentage points more likely than women to have an account. Oh, I'm sorry. So one of the reasons that we find when we look at the data more carefully, one of the explanations we have for this gap is gaps in employment status. And so Neli, can you tell us more about women and employment status?
We like to challenge each other. We work for years already together. So, first of all, lay of the land of who is in the workforce. And this is data based on 149 countries, I'm very proud to say. So, 53% of women, adult women around the world are in the workforce, 75% of them. Of course, we cannot speculate about it, right? Because some women probably chose not to go to workforce, but definitely there are some who cannot enter workforce for various reasons. So for those who are in the workforce, what's the tendency? Men are more likely to be employed full-time or be full-time, working full-time for yourself, or for themselves, or for an employer. Women are more likely to be unemployed. 6% of women are unemployed, or men are unemployed, 10% of women. And also, women, 17% of women are working part-time and do not want full-time, while for men it's only 10%. So impact of employment status on your happiness. So if you are in low development groups, there is no difference if you are unemployed, self-employed, or employed full-time. There is no difference if you are a man or a woman. Because we can explain it the following way. In low development countries, probably majority of people have low education. Even if they work full-time, it's low-paid job. So going full-time doesn't mean that you improve your life dramatically, right? You probably still don't have access to clean water, good education for your children, corruption in the country, crime, no infrastructure. When you go to the next level, medium level, then it's getting better. Obviously, and for men and women, full-time employment gives you a good bump, positive bump in your happiness or life evaluation. Gray here is women, blue is men. Situation in high income group, high development group is a little bit different. Similar to medium group, what we see is, yes, you are full-time employed for employee, you have a good bump, but unemployment story is different. And the reason for this is that this data is weighted by population weighted, so the largest number of people in this group are from former Soviet Union countries like Russia, Kazakhstan, Ukraine. And what happened is that in these countries, we women enter workforce for many years, but the cultural norm is men are breadwinners, right? Because of this, what we see is that men suffer more if they're unemployed than women. And story in very high development group is the same like in medium. You work, it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, you have positive impact on your happiness. So back to you, Leora. Are working women banked?
Good question. So here we see the height of the bar being the percentage of adults or women who report being in each employment category. I talked about business owners, self-employed, wage employed, unemployed, and out of the labor force. The blue shaded area, percentage of those who have an account. The black numbers on top of each bar is what percentage of female employees in this employment category are banked. So first notable is of women out of the labor force, a relatively small percentage are banked. Notably, what actually gives us that amount is the increasing move towards the digitization of government transfer payments. So for example, in Brazil, 88% of adults who receive a government transfer report receiving it directly into an account. However, we see a much bigger number. We see the bigger numbers, over 50%, among women who are in the workforce. Thanks. No problem. And so, but what we see here is, so the question is, what can the private sector do? What can bankers in the audience do to help narrow the gap in financial inclusion? And I see one avenue of tremendous market opportunity being adults who are unbanked but receive regular wage payments. These are people who need an account to receive their payments more safely, as well as have the security of electronic transfers, as well as potentially the ability and willingness to use other financial services, savings products, insurance products. Having payments, wage payments made to an account also helps build a credit history. We know that men are more likely to own assets than women, more likely to have physical collateral, and women are more dependent on reputational collateral. And receiving these electronic payments allows women to build a history of payments received, which is a good indicator of the ability to repay loans in the future. So what we see here is that in high-income countries, most wage payments are made into an account. Interestingly, a little bit of white is driven by the US, where checks are still popular. However, in the rest of the developing world, it still mostly is cash. I'll mention on the upper middle income, again, to complement Latin America, where there's been a tremendous increase in the digitization of wage payments, where 60% of wage earners in Latin America now receive their payments directly into an account. And so again, what are the potential welfare benefits of digitization of wage payments? Why would I argue that receiving payments to an account rather than cash would increase women's well-being? So first, as I mentioned, it's very often, the first entry point into the formal financial system. These are unbanked, so the numbers, like Global Findex, there are about 400 million unbanked adults around the world who are receiving their wage payments in cash. Of that, about 120 million are women. So it's a big number of unbanked women who could potentially be brought into the formal financial sector. Next, it increases the transparency of the payment. Makes it what we call, reduces the leakage, the likelihood that the intended recipient gets their money. Having an electronic paper trail, it's a little harder to siphon money off the top if it's being sent electronically. It also increases individuals' risk management capacity. It's really interesting, there's some cool research coming out of Kenya, out of Afghanistan, showing that if you send and receive mobile payments, your literal social networks in the case of emergency expand geographically. You'll get help from family and friends from a further distance away. It also reduces the cost for both the senders and the receivers. I'm at a factory in Bangladesh for the first of the month, pays $250 million US in 500 taka notes. That's $5 bills. He brings Mack trucks up to the factory and has to close his factory for 2 days to dole out the money. He's begging to join our research project to start paying his employers digitally. And just one more example. We're in Zambia, rural Zambia, and there's a school teacher. And she was complaining that the first 2 days of every month, she closes the village schools because she has to travel by bus to the capital to receive her cash wage payment. And her complaint to us was, I have to travel by bus with a wad of cash in my pocket. It's dangerous, I'm nervous. But not only would we have the benefit of the recipient, the schools in the village could be open for an additional day or two a month. So again, it's this real effect of financial inclusion, which we think is so important. And so, having an account not only offers these women the economic and the financial benefits, but also, I really believe, can also change their perception of their own well-being. So, Neli, do you have any interesting examples of this relationship between women employment and well-being?
We have just 2 minutes left. I will do it very fast. You can look at our slides later. China and India. Let's think about this. 70% of women in China are in the workforce, 12% less than men. In India, 29% are in the workforce versus 73% of men. And even if we go to highest education group, it's still in India is a huge difference. And numbers for unemployment look really depressing for this. So women are in India 3 times more likely to be unemployed. And an effect on happiness is also very different. So while in China, what we see is the same breadwinner effect that women don't suffer from unemployment as much as men. In India, when you step to full-time employment, you step one extra step on happiness. So what it means that bringing more people to workforce and giving them full-time job in India, it's not only economic advantage for India, it's also making more women happy. So last from Leora.
So I'll just give very quickly a little bit about, I mentioned this project in Bangladesh. And so we started with a baseline survey where we asked women,
It's not working. It's green one. Okay.
where we asked women, and men, but 70% of the sample is women, where does your paycheck go? What are the financial services that these women might need? So this is in the first 5 days, mostly in the first day. About a quarter goes to rent. A lot of other goes to other bills, utilities, school fees. Most food is bought on credit. 35% is remitted back to the family in the village, which leaves them less than a quarter on average of money of their paycheck to last them the whole month. And not only that, this is what's really striking. Is that we asked them about the end of the month. Over half need to borrow, mostly from informal, very high-interest lenders. But about 20% of these women who work full-time report going hungry, skipping meals at the end of the month for them and their family because they run out of money. And this is suggesting the need for financial products. So these women are now receiving money directly into an account. Think about auto deposit payments like we make into our 401k pension. We're offering them 2 really short-term savings products. So about 3 days' salary is pulled off the top, which they get 2 weeks in the middle of the month, plus a little extra interest kicked in. Will that help them make it to the end of the month? There's also this huge appetite we're finding for longer-term savings products. They want their money out of their own personal temptations of family members, for a year or 2 to reach longer-term savings goals. Insurance products, again, appropriate credit products. And so I'm just going to leave you with 3 takeaways in my last 30 seconds. First, that employment is related to greater well-being, having a good job, for both men and for women. Second, that account ownership is associated with greater well-being. And again, as we keep talking about this morning, because of the greater security, privacy, and control that it offers women over their money. And third, that I think there's still huge market opportunities to expand financial inclusion for women, improve their well-being, one such avenue being wage workers, helping them transition from cash to electronic payments. So, thank you.